Right, everyone. Again, welcome to our presentation on resumes. We're going to cover some good stuff that may be a review for some of you. It may be things you've already known or have heard, but there might be some new stuff too. So we will be looking at our resume best practices for today. And to let you know, if you're joining us from your office, from work, or from anywhere where you live, and you need to leave or you need to get up and have a bio break, get a drink of water, you're being called out of the office for whatever reason, just remember you'll get a recording and can get the stuff that you might have missed. So take care of your needs and let us know if you want to email us later after the presentation with any specific questions or needs. You can do that at careers@wgu.edu. So today we're going to be talking about applicant tracking systems. We're going to talk about, go through a walkthrough with resumes, some do's and don'ts. We will be touching base lightly on AI and maybe some ChatGPT uses for your resume. And if you have any questions around that, I'll do the best I can to also address some of those questions. So let's jump right in. We do spend some time about those applicant tracking systems because when you're applying to a job, that's the first thing that's going to happen. You apply to a position, your application and your resume goes through this process of being scanned for keywords, for relevant qualifications. It will look at your education section. It will look at mostly it will spend time looking at your work experience. So even if you're a career changer, you want to make sure that you are using some transferable skills to be able to put into your work experience section. And that summary at the top of your resume, you want that to be used for introducing yourself. If you are a career changer, you're an aspiring cybersecurity specialist, getting your degree from Western Governors University or whatever your degree program is. That introduces you, but then your work experience should really contain those rich keywords and things like that. So when we're talking about the ATS, those two critical areas, one is try to stay away from pre-formatted templates that you might find online or through Microsoft Word. The reason is some of them are just really not that good and they're not ATS friendly. I don't know if you can see this one. It might be kind of small, but you can see there's a big dark band to the left, right? Correct. And there's a person's face, a picture on the resume. You never ever want to use a picture on your resume. And you really don't want to use those little icons for your contact information. Little telephone, little email, little something, for your website. All of those are just adding extra data behind those templates that may confuse or get interference with the ATS. So the spacing or this is done in column format. So you've got that black bar, that's a column. You've got where Mike Richard has his contact information, that's a big column. They just don't play well with today's ATS formatting or things like that. So you want to be careful of that. Even if it's a PDF, and PDFs are probably okay to use as part of your application, but still, I would just keep it safe at this point and use a regular Word document. We have templates, so to speak, on our home site, and I'm going to show you and give you a tour of our resume page and where you can find those if that would be the safest course of action. The other thing you want to be critical of, and I've gotten some folks who have some thoughts about this, but you want to be able to tailor your resume to each different job. And each different resume should be customized by using the keywords from the job description. That's what the employer is going by. The employers and the recruiters are using that job description to compare your resume to what they're looking for. And if it doesn't match, then you may be kicked out of the running. So that's your strongest point or takeaway from this presentation. I would say don't use a pre-formatted resume template. Use a Word document. Use the ones that we have on our website and make sure that it's customized to the jobs you're applying to. Because if you don't have that high match rate, then you could automatically be rejected from consideration. Now, other elements of the applicant tracking systems, as we said before, they're really just, even in today's environment with the AI and Chat GPT, they don't always make it through if you're using a formatted embellishments, pictures, things like that. So just be careful of how you're formatting your resume. Columns, color tables, headers and footers, things like that, they usually don't make it through, so they can't be read very well. So those are some areas to kind of steer away from. We call them not ATS friendly. And again, as I said a moment ago, what's going to help get you through that is just a very plain, simple Word document. I don't know if any other formatting would make it through, like if you're using Google, or if you're using any other kind of word processing program, Apple Pages. I don't know if those will get through the programs. Mostly when I'm looking at job descriptions, they always say that they want a Word document. So I would just, if you can save it as a Word document, that would probably be okay. But just as a word of caution, that would be the easiest. You all should have access to Microsoft 365. I believe that all WGU students will have free access to that. So you might want to use that if you need to save your documents in a Word format. If you don't know if you have it or not, I would ask your mentor and they can find out and give you maybe the access to Microsoft 365. Now, a word on using GPT, using Chat GPT or any other AI platform. It's perfectly okay. You're not cheating. It's not unethical. But there are a couple of things you want to keep in mind. Some interesting facts to start out. One, and this has probably changed by now. This is kind of some older data, but it's the most recent that we can find. The one fact is that 60% of job seekers are using these AI tools to help write their resume. And again, it's okay. There's nothing unethical for this. You're not cheating, especially if you're not a writer or you are a career changer. And you may find it a little difficult on how to get started. So I should have written out some prompts, but I would start a prompt by telling the Chat GPT that you are a career coach, and then ask it to write a resume for a career changer going into, and then put your whatever your degree or information is. You can even say use the following job description and highlight the strongest keywords. I'm writing this in the chat so you can see how that looks like. So when you start out and you're telling that Chat GPT that you're a career changer, what you're doing is you're giving them a persona. That's called a persona. So you're telling them, hey, Chat GPT, act like a career coach and write a resume for a career changer going into software development, nursing, accounting, whatever it is. use the following job description and highlight the strongest keywords. So you can upload the job description for that. Now, here's another clue. After you write this, you want to put in 3 hash marks and then upload your job description. This tells the GPT, don't include my instructions on the output. So that's pretty cool, huh? So you're telling them, hey, I'm just giving you the instructions, but don't use it as part of the output when you give me a sample resume. Those 3 hash marks is the code to tell them not to include it. Very interesting. So back to our facts. Our second fact is that resumes that are optimized by AI will have at least a 20% higher chance of moving on to the next step. But what you want to make sure you're doing is don't take it at face value. You want to take the AI's output, what they give you, you want to proofread it, go through it, make it your own, because there are recruiters and also employers that may have tools that will spot an AI generated resume. So you want to be able to give it your own voice, give it your own tone, give it your own touch. But if it gives you some really better writing responses, then use those, but then make it your own work, your own product. Because 75% of candidates that use AI tools, they also can use them to practice interview preparation. And 60% of candidates that use AI tools can help them to even draft a cover letter. And if you choose to do a cover letter, those are also scanned by those applicant tracking systems in the same way they scan resumes. So you want to make sure it's a good, clean, professional tone that you're writing your cover letter. It's not very verbose, it's not long, but it's a short 3 to 5 paragraph introduction of who you are and why you're applying to that specific job. And then it introduces your resume. 80% of companies, if not more, of these companies are using some form of AI to also screen your resume. So the more you know about the AI tools and the chat GPTs on how they can be used for your job search, the better you're going to be. And I'm going to show you some resources we have that will help you also for this. So the benefits, again, of using this new technology that we have is that it will help you save time. It'll help you save stress and anxiety. You can use it with your current existing resume to update it, so you don't have to start from scratch, but you can if you want. And again, it will help you to tailor your resume to fit the job by using the job description and highlighting and giving you some samples of some good, rich keywords. A lot of products that are out there will also give you feedback. It will kind of grade your resume on tone, grammar, spelling, how much or how close you fit the job description. We have this. We have this in Big Interview, and I'm going to show you where that is. Big Interview now has a component that's called Big Resume. Tricky, eh? Big Resume. So you'll find that in the Big Interview platform from our office. So here are some tools that you can also use if you want to give this a try yourself. You can use these to put your resume through just to see how it will grade your resume. JobScan is probably the more popular one. I like that a lot. But these others, you can write down now if you want to write them. Here, let me see if I can. Well, it's not going to let me grab it. Sorry about that. But if you want to put this in your own search for whatever reason, maybe sometimes WebEx won't let me get through to these. But these are some samples of some of these AI tools to act as an ATS if you want to give it a run through. I'll stay here for a minute if you're writing those down. Uh, Typically I could grab these and put them in the chat, but for some reason it's not letting me do it just yet. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. This is just some more interesting tips, interesting facts. When recruiters are looking at resumes, they really spend just a few seconds on here, and they're going to spend a lot of time looking at your contact information, of course. Where did you work before? Are there transferable skills that you're writing about? Where you're coming from? What are your end dates, your start and end dates? You, pardon me, got a frog in my throat. We're going to go through some of the facts about breaking down your resume in just a moment, and we'll look at the dates and the data and the information that's there. Your education section, things of that sort. This is where they spend a lot of time looking. But really, once it gets to a recruiter, they'll just skim your resume to see, do you fit the bill before you go on to the next more serious review. Here's a quick look of a format that is pretty straightforward, that is ATS friendly. Starting at the top, of course, you'll have your name. You don't have to use all caps. This sample just had it that way. But your first and last name. You do want to give your contact information, your phone number, email, if you're on LinkedIn. I still recommend giving your city and state. You don't have to give your full street address, but city and state would be fine. You just want to use one phone number and one email. So they're only going to contact you through one method. Right? Looks like we have a question. Is the name in the header or in the document itself? I know you said headers aren't great, but it's a great space saver. The problem is that we're finding out that those applicant tracking systems can't read inside those headers or footers. So it may be a good space saver, but if that's not getting through and they don't have that information, then it kind of, shoot yourself in the foot, so to speak. What you can do as far as a space saver is for your name at the top of your resume, only keep it 16 point. Keep your contact information maybe 11 point size. Have your margins narrow through Microsoft Office, and then have your text and bullet points, the text in your bullet points, you can have at 10 point size. That sounds small, but it's the smallest you can go, and that will also be a good space saver. So your professional summary, again, is an area where you can introduce yourself. It's like your 30-second commercial. I'd say that could be, 5 or 7 lines. You want to make it relevant to the job that you're applying to the industry that you're searching or you're seeking. Don't say seeking a job, or don't say seeking whatever. That's a keyword that turns your summary into an objective statement, and objective statements have dropped off resumes. So keep it future oriented, keep it future facing, if you will. That's going to be most important. The professional experience can be next. And if you're in the IT field, if you're in the School of Technology, you can have a technical summary. And the technical summary can help you to cover your coding, languages, what if Windows, Apple products, things like that. So it really can be a good way for you to use that. And you can find a sample of this on our website, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. But that could be an added section if you have space and you want to keep it that way. Your professional summary, a technical summary after that, or technical profile. Even if you're in business, human resources, accounting, finance, you can have a business let's say, business competencies. And that can outline your more business tools, things like that. But in your professional experience, you do want to start with your job title, and then to the far right margin will be your dates. And we suggest the far right margin because when recruiters are going down your resume, it's the easiest way for them to make sure that your work history is all in alignment, instead of having it staggered throughout the page, depending on how long your job title was. Then the second line can be your employer name, comma, city and state, using it that way. Having it divided up this way instead of having it on one line, that applicant tracking system, here's something else that's very interesting, and this is very true. When you're applying to a job, the applicant tracking system is now turning your resume into a series of code. I'm going to write this out. And who can guess how many lines of code a typical resume will become? A lot. Up to 15,000 lines of code. So when you're writing your resume and you're putting it in this format to have your job title first, then the second line is your employer name, city and state. When that ATS breaks this down into that 15,000 lines of code, it's properly dividing out that information so it doesn't make it all one line of code. You don't want your job title, city and state, company name, dates, all one line. It needs to be broken down, and this helps the ATS to do that. Then optional could be maybe a description of your role that's there. You don't have to do that. It's optional. Maybe 1 or 2 lines is best. And then your bullet points will reinforce what your job was. I always say that your bullet points, you want your bullet points to, don't tell me what you did, tell me how did you do it. So you can use that STAR technique, talk about, you can say what you did, how you did it, and what was the result. So that helps give you a formula for that. And then I have that broken down in that bottom part of the screen, action, verb, task, and result. That's another way to use to break it down. If you don't have a result or you can't quantify what the result is, that's not a problem. If you can, that would be great because numbers catch the employer's eyes, and it shows you how you were successful. How did you measure success? Increased data on production by 20%. Reduced compliance issues by 35%. This is just the further part of the resume. If you can make your resume one page, that would be great. If you can't, that's not a deal breaker at all. In fact, when you apply to jobs, those applicant tracking systems don't count pages, but you don't want to do it more than 2 pages because you want to also be prepared for the human aspect. When it gets to a live person and you have 3 pages, they may not take the time to read that entire document. You want to keep it 1 to 2 pages. Same principle with your education section. You want to start with your degree and go ahead and spell it out so it gets through that applicant tracking system and it fully produces your degree name. Make sure it is reflective of what would be on your transcript or your diploma. Don't just put BS in cybersecurity. Go ahead and spell it out and put Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity. The expected graduation date, can be on that same line. Again, it could be to the far right margin. You want to have the university's name and the city and state. Be careful with this happens quite a bit. Governors does not have an apostrophe S. So there's no apostrophe S in governors. It's not possessive. It's just governors. So you might want to double check just to make sure. It's easy to make, do that a little bit, but just double check, always proofread your resume. You can choose, or you can include some courses if you want, maybe 3 to 5 of your top courses, especially if you are a career changer. You can do it in that way. If you have a master's degree, you also include the bachelor's degree. Even if it's not in your industry, it's just the protocol of the writing style of today's resumes. If you have a bachelor's degree, do not include an associate's degree and never include high school. Down in red, you can see that helps answer the questions. How far back do you typically need to go? And basically, most resume writers and employers will land on about 10 to 15 years. Now, there are some exceptions to that, and we can address that. Or if you send your resume in for a review to our office, you can include that in your message to us if that seems to be a sticking point. And then, as I said, if you have a second page, you want to make sure that it's at least 1/3 of that second page, not just a few lines. So Brittany asks a question, would you still remove your associate's degree if it was in a different subject that relates to prior work experience? I would say so, yes. And I have recommended that, and I've seen that before. It makes perfect sense. But the two things that you want to why you want to consider removing it is for space, if that becomes an issue. You take that out, then you're adding, 3 extra lines for space. The other is if it's not relevant to the qualifications, say that the educational qualifications, then it's not going to be considered anyway. What they're going to look at for that prior work experience will be some transferable skills, not necessarily the correlation of your degree. And again, if you have a stronger argument to keep it on there and everything, is okay as far as spacing, it may not be a deal breaker, but you don't want the recruiter. We're trying to guess, right? We're guessing what the recruiter might be thinking. With my conversations with recruiters, summarizing a lot of it, they're basically saying they would rather you stick to the closest degree program that is more relevant to the industry. All right, Natalie has a question about the professional experience section. She's working on a role toward education. I only have one relevant job. Should I only list the one relevant job? What you can do is you can have a section that has education experience, and then have that if it's student teaching, if it's substitute teaching, if it's paraprofessional, whatever that might be. And then you can have another section that is just additional experience, just to kind of break it up a little bit, and do it that way. Where the mind of a recruiter shifts a little bit is, even though it's not relevant to education, for example, they like to see, have you worked at all? Do you have any kind of work history whatsoever? Because that translates into working on teams, working with, what's your work ethic, stuff like that. Yeah, I see that a lot too, Bridget. So what do you do if your job title doesn't really align to the duties, especially if your job title is something that might be entry level, but you're doing way more than that. You're involved in maybe management level activities. I don't think you can do much with the job title. It really does need to be why you were hired. But you can in the way you write those bullet points, you can say something to the effect of um, excelled at a position by operating on a management level by doing blah 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 blah. So something like that. I mean, you really can kind of give it a little bit more of a description in that way. And I've had students say that they have progressed. They started out entry level, they progressed to a maybe a management or a leadership role, and then in a bullet point they have literally put that. They have put let me see if I write it out. Progressed from floor sales to assistant manager. So that might be their first bullet point to let the recruiter know that they have been rewarded with that. I don't know if that helps or maybe give you a different way of thinking about that. But the let's I would say to see how that goes. Where would you list practical skills, for example, instructional design skills, but degree is in broader curriculum and instruction, but you have not technically used those skills in current job? I put those back up where I talked about the competencies, and you might include that as well. So you could say curriculum instruction competencies. And then those practical skills could be there if they don't seem to fit anywhere on your current job. That also gives you an extra section to put those kinds of skills, especially if like they don't fit anywhere else. I can't put them in my job section because they don't really fit there. But they can fit in a customized section that you can build like that. Also, if you choose to do a cover letter, you could put those in your cover letter as well, and it might make better sense to have it there. How would you highlight being part of an equity team and leadership team in education? You can put after your education section, you could put another custom section that could be memberships, could be one heading for that. That might be better. That's kind of broad, but it might be able to fit that in there. And then you could put equity team, the school name, since 2003 or 2021 or whatever the case may be. Something like that. Member of, and then from where I'll just put institution since, and then the year. Could be something like that. So there is a little bit of leeway with the resume to add some things, but some things are kind of hard baked in there. Like maybe the formatting could be part of that. The way that you format your sections could be part of that. But then there's some kind of wiggle room, if that makes sense. Now, if you are a career changer and it's like, I'm totally changing industries, and if I do a standard industry resume, it may not speak the right message. You may not come across. In that case, you might consider doing what we call a skills-based resume. So a skills-based resume has the very same heading at the top, your contact information. The professional summary may be more about, again, that aspiring, using that kind of language, aspiring software designer, software engineer, studying, and then put some courses in there that might be higher programming courses. Um, Highlighting strong ability to use Python and C Sharp, um, JavaScript, something like that. Using some hard skills and soft skills that could be relevant for that. Then your education would go next to highlight your education. And then maybe some breaking it off into major skill sets or projects could be there. And then at the bottom of this particular format, it would just be a simple work history. Okay. So position title, position, company name, city, state, and dates. No bullet points would go there. If there's a gap to say, hey, I started school and I'm afraid that there might be a gap and I'm still in school, then put that first point there that you can see, pursuing degree in Western Governors University, Salt Lake City, Utah, and your graduation date. This is different than your education section. It's obviously, it looks like it's being duplicated, but in your work history, it's acting as a placeholder. So there are no gaps in your work history. If you were a stay-at-home parent, or if you were on a convalescence break, or whatever the case may be, then that's what you would put. It's a placeholder. You don't have to go into any detail, and it's not going to be, a red flag to an employer. What would be a red flag is if you had a large chunk of a work history gap. They want to know, what were you doing during that time? And that, Brittany, that can answer your question on volunteer work. Volunteer work is still experience. So if you want to put that in your experience section, wherever it falls in line, you don't have to put volunteer. You just put, what was your role? If you didn't have a job title, it's like, well, I was just a volunteer. Then you could put that. You could put, business volunteer, or volunteer for nonprofit, and then the nonprofit name and the dates, and then maybe some bullet points for what you did. And that's that last part. You volunteered work that's relevant to gain experience in your field. That's exactly what they're going to be looking for. Yeah, leave off the for fun for recruiters. Highlight what are you getting out of it? What did you, how is it relating to your field? So that's good point. So good point for that. Some quick do's and don'ts. Again, this is going to be repeating some of the things we talked about, but just make sure that I would stick away or stay away from document titles. I've had a few folks on the resume put project manager, and that's great. That's what they're going for. But if the job is not necessarily a project management role, then that is automatically beginning to kind of title yourself out of the position, if that makes sense. Choose a classic font, Calibri, Arial, something like that. Times New Roman is still fine. Don't find a fancy font that you think might, make you stand out, because it may not translate going in through those applicant tracking systems. Remember, when you're applying to a job, they're translating your resume into those 15 to 16,000 lines of code. So if you're using a font that's not being recognized, that might mess things up. If you can limit your resume to one page, that would be great. A page and a half is perfectly fine. It's not a deal breaker. Maintain consistency within formatting, and that means your bullet points are lined up. They're not staggered on the page, stuff like that. Using the job posting or the job description really is going to be your best friend. That's going to be the best thing to be able to identify those keywords, help you stand out by making you and helping you be relevant to the job. Things you want to avoid doing. Don't just pick out the keywords and put them on your resume and color them clear or white so they disappear, because that's a thing. Not recently, but I've had students do that before, and they'll take out all the keywords relevant to that job. They'll put them at the bottom of the document and make them kind of disappear, but they're caught by those applicant tracking systems. If they're caught by the recruiter, you're automatically going to be disqualified. So I would avoid doing that. Listing references upon request have dropped off resumes a long time ago. So that would really age your knowledge of the resume. Again, as a reminder, avoid using templates that you might find online. Avoid using tables or text boxes or borders, pictures, icons. Avoid writing in first person, using first personal pronouns. You can use a font that is as small as 10 point. I wouldn't go larger than 12 max on anything, just so that you can save space. And here is a sample of a job description. And what I did was I highlighted what after reading, I might have read this, let's just say I read this 2 or 3 times or 4 times, just to really get a really, really good grasp of what they're asking for. And then what I did here is I highlighted in red what I need to make sure is going to go in my resume, and maybe the transferable skills that I have from prior work. Communication, collaboration, working with teams, community development, customer service. So that when I go to write my resume, these pop out at me and I don't miss anything. And this is a really good way to use a job description to really highlight what is going to hopefully be picked up by those applicant tracking systems or those recruiters. Now, let me show you where you'll find our resume section. And can somebody put in the chat that you can see this page that I just slid over? Yep. Okay, great. So if you have not been to our resume before, our homepage, this is our homepage. You can see the address there, careers.wgu.edu. And that's where you'll our homepage for all of our resources, everything beyond resumes. But here's how you'll find it. Go here to this bar up here under Build Your Brand, and resumes are there. You'll also find cover letters, LinkedIn, personal branding, and portfolios if you're in the IT field or in any field, education. Some of you teachers that are out there that need a portfolio, that's where you'll find that. But click on resumes. And then I want to draw your attention here. Here are some upcoming events only specific to resumes. And look, we've got the one we're joining now, July 1st. And there's another one I'm doing on July 15th. So this website breaks down the different events we have pertaining to that particular resource that you're looking at. Something new. All right, I'm going to scroll down. So resume resources and supports. This is where you'll find, if you want a review of your resume, we ask you to go through step 1 first. This is going to open up the resume course that we ask folks to attend. And you may have to sign in with your single sign-on, like it's asking me to do. And then you'll see where you go through. It's only like 20 minutes long. It's not very long at all. So you got modules you'll go through, navigating this resource, and you just go through this, and you should be able to make it through that pretty well. There's also a writing guide. If you want more information on how to find that, there's lots of information on what to do as far as getting started. But then as you scroll down, as I said before, if you want to find other templates Step 2 is where you can find that. And then regardless of where you're at, let's say School of Technology, just click on that box, and then you'll see some templates that are here. You just open them up, and then you can download those samples, and you can use those samples. So that is for all of the different schools we have. You can do it. School of Business, accounting, marketing, MBA. If you're a veteran, we have a veteran-related resume sample as well. That's going to be found in the business templates. These others are additional help if you want them. If you want to learn more about accomplishment statements or how to build that strong profile, you can find those in step 3. And we have other videos. A video specifically on do's and don'ts, best practices. Other resources toward, as I said, cover letters and LinkedIn. Future articles that we have. What's the right length of your resume? Everything you need to know about a federal resume. And then another copy of our event that we did here today. By the way, that's me in the little picture. Then again, more videos that are there. More resources broken down by college. So lots and lots of information that you can find under Build Your Brand. Click on resumes, and then that's where you'll find us. All right. So now, folks, if you have any questions, that would be great. I know we're coming close up on our time. If you need to pop out, please feel free to do so if you need to. Again, if you joined us later, you're going to get a copy of this presentation. I will send out that email for everyone to look at. Here is our contact information. If you do call in, you'll go to a voicemail, and then one of our advisors will call you back either that same day or the next business day. So I will open up the time for a few minutes. If you have any specific questions based on our presentation or any questions you brought today. That's a good question. So how would you reflect a prolonged unemployment period for health reasons on your resume? That might be, I mean, you'll have to look, you can look for some keywords to use. It could be simply convalescence and then the dates. But under that, you might put in during that health period, were you doing anything to stay up to date with any skill sets? Were you attending any, online workshops or anything like that? Or you started your school at WGU, you could put that as a keyword or a bullet point. Mostly what I hear from recruiters, they just want to know, what were you doing during that time? Were you doing something that would have been active that relates to your professional development? If not, it just might be convalescence. I had one recruiter say that if you were sick, or especially during COVID, when things like that were happening, they would put in a bullet point that would say something to the effect of either fully recovered and able to work, or something to that effect. That doesn't sound really good, but letting them know that you had a time of convalescence, you are fully recovered and 100% ready to get back into the workforce. However you want to word that, that might be a AI, a chat GPT question. How do I better phrase this situation and see what results you get? So Jennifer kind of hit on what I just relate to. There is a gap on the resume due to COVID. helping kids with online school. Do I need to account for that gap in my resume? Education is my target resume. Yeah, I would, especially if you were helping. You could put, during COVID, your skill sets and your focus was on tutoring. And what did you tutor? So it doesn't have to say I tutored my kids. It just be tutored at home school. What courses did you do? What activities or techniques did you use? Things like that. All right. One question from Marcy. One of my most relevant work history for my degree is one from the shortest periods I've worked, just 6 months, as our company was acquired by another company. I felt that this work history will stand out, but the employer will wonder why the short employment time. Should I say something somewhere in the cover letter or under the start and end date that company was acquired and HR staff was laid off? I would probably put that at your first bullet point under that job. Put, company was acquired by other employment, something like that. You don't have to say HR staff was laid off, unless you want to maybe find a different way of saying that. But that could be your first bullet point, and then the others are going to reinforce that 6-month experience. What did you do and learn from that experience? And I think if you explained it in the cover letter too, that just reinforces your points and what you want to get across. I think both would be good. Yes, Sharon, you do use past tense verbiage for a past experience. So you're definitely right. See, what are your thoughts on including self-employment? It certainly builds a variety of transferable skills. Yeah, and I see that all the time. So what you want to be careful of, and this is kind of my professional tip on this, I would not put owner or something like that, because then that question might come up to say, well, what happened to the company? If you were the owner of a company, why are you moving on to something else? You could put manager, you could put leadership, the company name, leadership, quote unquote, would be the job title, the company name, something to that effect. It may not be as a big of a deal today. I might be overstating it, but I would say you want to minimize any risk of employers asking more questions than they get answers. If that makes sense. So yes, like tutoring would be under job experience. All right. Good questions, everyone. Okay, so you're a founder of a nonprofit organization in Africa. Is it a good idea to include that as well? I'd say if it includes those keywords, I'm sorry, those transferable skills that would be relevant for what you're doing here, you could do that. Maybe again, that first bullet point could be founder of nonprofit organization in Africa, working remotely to still oversee operations, something like that. So again, they're not guessing to say, well, wait a minute, if we were to consider you as an employee, would you be needed to take time off to go back to Africa? That might be the case. I don't know, but you want to minimize any risk of them misinterpreting what that might be. But if you spell it out in that way, that could be fine. If it's not really relevant to your next career step, then I would not include it. It might be something you can include maybe during the interview, and to say, in addition to my qualifications for this position, I also founded a nonprofit organization in Africa, and here's how I believe that experience is relevant and can add value if you were to choose me for this position. So sometimes that kind of detail can be held off for the interview. All right. Well, folks, I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording.